My name is Sabrina and I am 34 years old. I used to believe that family was everything, the safest place on earth. The one thing you could always count on. For 12 years, I worked myself to exhaustion to become the financial pillar of my family. I thought my love and dedication would be returned with gratitude and loyalty, but on an ordinary Thursday afternoon, an accidental phone call from my sister shattered everything I believed. What happens when the people you sacrifice everything for turn out to be the ones who hurt you most? Before we dive in, tell me where you are watching from today. And if you have ever felt taken for granted by the people you love, hit that like button and subscribe. This story might just change how you see things. I was born and raised in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where front porches had rocking chairs and everybody waved at each other even if they had never met. My father, Raymond, spent his days underneath cars at the local auto shop. He left before dawn and returned after sunset, his fingernails permanently black with grease no matter how many times he scrubbed them. My mother, Patricia, worked the register at the grocery store on Main Street. She smiled at customers for 8 hours straight while her feet swelled and her lower back screamed for relief. We were what people called working class. Not destitute, but always one emergency away from disaster. I remember being 7 years old and pressing my ear against my bedroom door late at night, listening to my parents whisper about bills they could not pay. The mortgage was late again. The electricity might get shut off. There was no money for new school clothes. Those hushed conversations shaped me in ways I did not understand until much later. I made a silent promise to myself in that cramped bedroom with the peeling wallpaper. When I grew up, my family would never have to worry about money again. I would make sure of it. My sister Megan arrived when I was 6 years old. She was a surprise, my parents said. A blessing. From the moment she came home from the hospital wrapped in a pink blanket with a tuft of blonde hair sticking up, she became the center of everything. I did not resent her for it. How could I? She was my baby sister. I fed her bottles when my mother was too tired. I changed her diapers when my father was working overtime. I read her bedtime stories and sang her songs and promised to always protect her. But even as a child, I noticed the difference in how we were treated. Megan got new toys, while I got hand-me-downs. Megan got praised for every small accomplishment while my achievements were expected. Megan was the princess. I was the helper. I told myself it was normal. Youngest children always got more attention. It did not mean my parents loved me any less. They were just tired from raising me first, and Megan got the benefit of their experience. That is what I told myself. For years and years, that is what I believed. My role in the family was established early. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who helped without being asked and never complained. When my parents worked late, I cooked dinner. When Megan struggled with homework, I tutored her. When bills needed to be organized, I created systems. I was the fixer, the caretaker, the one who held everything together, and I took pride in it. Being needed felt like being loved. I did not know those were two different things. When I turned 17, I applied to every scholarship available. I spent countless hours in the public library filling out applications and writing essays about my dreams of financial success. I wanted to study finance, to understand money, to master the thing that had caused my family so much stress. The acceptance letter from a prestigious university in Chicago arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in April. Full scholarship. 4 years. My ticket out. I remember my mother's face when I showed her the letter. She smiled, but there was something else in her eyes. Something I could not identify at the time. Now I think it might have been calculation. "That is wonderful, honey," she said. "You will be able to help us so much once you graduate. Not congratulations. Not we are proud of you. Just a reminder of my role, my purpose." I moved to Chicago with everything I owned packed into 2 suitcases and $312 in my pocket. College was a blur of classes, textbooks, and part-time jobs. I waited tables at a diner near campus serving breakfast to hungover students and exhausted professors. I tutored freshmen in statistics. I worked the front desk at the library on weekends. And every single month I sent money home. It started small. $50 here, $75 there, whatever I could spare after rent and groceries. My parents never asked me to do it, but they never told me to stop either. The money just disappeared into the void of their needs, and I felt good knowing I was helping. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a major investment firm. The hours were brutal. 80-hour weeks were standard. I lived on coffee and vending machine sandwiches, sleeping on the couch in my office more nights than I care to admit. But I climbed. Slowly, steadily, relentlessly. Junior analyst, senior analyst. Each promotion came with a raise, and each raise meant more money I could funnel back to Ohio. By the time I was 34, I'd become a senior financial analyst earning $180,000 a year. I had a corner office on the 42nd floor with a view of Lake Michigan. I had the respect of my colleagues and the trust of my clients. On paper, I was a success story. The girl from small-town Ohio who made it big in the city. But my apartment was a modest one-bedroom in a building with thin walls and a temperamental elevator. I owned exactly 3 work-appropriate outfits that I rotated carefully. I had not taken a real vacation in 7 years. My savings account, which should have been substantial given my income, was perpetually modest. Because the money went elsewhere. Let me tell you exactly where it went. For my parents, I paid off the remaining $75,000 on their mortgage. When my father's truck broke down beyond repair, I bought him a new one for $32,000. When my mother needed knee replacement surgery, I covered the $28,000 medical bill without hesitation. And every single month for 8 years, I sent them $2,000 so they could live comfortably. That monthly support alone totaled $192,000. For Megan, I paid her entire college tuition, 4 years at a private university totaling $90,000. When she graduated, I surprised her with a car worth $25,000. When she wanted to move into her own apartment, I covered the $8,000 security deposit, and when she decided to open a boutique selling handmade jewelry and vintage clothing, I gave her $40,000 to get started. She promised to pay me back when the business took off. 4 years later, I was still waiting. Altogether, I'd given my family close to $500,000 over 12 years. I never kept a running total. I never demanded receipts or repayment plans. I never made them feel guilty about accepting. Because that is not what family does, right? Family helps each other. Family sacrifices. Family puts love above money. That is what I believed. I thought I was investing in relationships. I thought I was showing love the only way I knew how. I thought that someday when I needed them, they would be there for me the way I had always been there for them. I was wrong about everything. The signs were there, of course. Looking back, they were everywhere, but I was so committed to the story I had told myself about my loving family that I refused to see them. When I visited home, conversations always circled back to money. The property taxes were going up, the car needed repairs, Megan's boutique needed new inventory. I would leave each visit having written another check, feeling both empty and strangely satisfied. At least I was useful. At least I was needed. When I called just to chat, the conversations were brief unless there was a request attached. My mother could talk for hours about Megan's life, her accomplishments, her struggles, her romantic dramas, but when I mentioned anything about my own existence, the subject changed quickly. I convinced myself I was being oversensitive, that I was reading too much into innocent interactions, that my family loved me. They just had their own way of showing it. I held on to that belief like a drowning person holds on to driftwood, because the alternative was unthinkable. The phone rang on a Tuesday evening in March and everything changed. I was sitting in my Chicago apartment reviewing quarterly projections on my laptop when Megan's name appeared on my screen. We had not spoken in almost 3 weeks, which was not unusual. She was busy with the boutique, with her social life, with Derek. I understood. When I answered, her voice was electric with excitement. Derek proposed, she announced. I am getting married. Genuine happiness flooded through me. Derek came from a prominent family in the Chicago suburbs. His father ran a successful real estate development company. His mother chaired multiple charity boards. Derek himself worked in commercial property investment and drove a car that cost more than my annual salary. I had met him several times at family gatherings. He was polished, articulate, confident without being arrogant. More importantly, he looked at Megan like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He seemed like a good match. Congratulations, I said warmly. That is incredible news. When are you thinking? October, she replied. We want a fall wedding. You know how gorgeous the leaves are in October. We are planning something big, 200 guests, maybe more. Derek's family knows everyone. I smiled despite myself. My baby sister getting married. It felt surreal. Have you started looking at venues? I asked. We have our hearts set on Lakewood Estate. You know that place outside Columbus? Derek's parents got married there 35 years ago. It would be so meaningful to continue the tradition. I knew Lakewood Estate by reputation. Rolling green hills, a restored Victorian mansion, gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. It was also one of the most expensive wedding venues in the state. There was a pause on the line. I knew what was coming before she said it. The thing is, Megan said carefully, Mom and Dad cannot really contribute much, and Derek's parents are covering some things, but they expect our family to handle certain expenses too. I closed my eyes. The familiar weight settled onto my shoulders. How much, I asked. She hesitated. The venue alone is $15,000 just to reserve it. Then there is the wedding planner, the catering, the photographer, the flowers, the dress, the music. Just give me the total, Megan. A breath on the other end of the line. Probably around $60,000. Maybe a little more. $60,000. The number hung in the air between us. That was more than most people made in a year. That was nearly all of my savings. But this was my sister's wedding. The most important day of her life. How could I possibly say no? I can cover it, I heard myself say. Send me the invoices as they come in. Megan squealed with delight. Oh my gosh, Sabrina, are you serious? You are the absolute best. I love you so much. This is going to be perfect. I love you too, I said. Just keep me updated on everything. Over the following weeks, the expenses arrived in a steady stream. First came the deposit for Lakewood Estate, $15,000 for a Saturday in mid-October. I transferred the money without hesitation. Then came Harper, the wedding planner. She came highly recommended by Derek's mother and charged $8,000 for her services. Money transferred. The photographer and videographer were a package deal. $7,000 for all-day coverage, drone footage, and a cinematic highlight reel. Done. The florist sent an estimate for centerpieces, bouquets, boutonnieres, and ceremony arrangements. $6,000 worth of roses, peonies, and eucalyptus. Approved. Megan texted me photos of wedding dresses asking my opinion. She tried on dozens before settling on a custom-designed gown with hand-sewn beadwork and a cathedral-length train. $9,000. I did not hesitate. The catering company required a deposit for a 5-course meal for 200 guests. $12,000. I signed the contract myself. The band and DJ came next. Live music for the ceremony and cocktail hour, then a DJ for the reception. $5,000 total. One by one, the payments left my account. $60,000 for my sister's perfect day. I told myself it was worth it. This was family. This was what mattered. But then strange things started happening. A few weeks after I sent the initial round of payments, I texted Megan offering to help with the planning. I could fly home for a weekend, I suggested. We could look at decorations together, finalize the seating chart, do whatever needed to be done. Sister bonding time. Her response was oddly brief. Thanks, but Mom and Aunt Louise are handling most of it. We have got it covered. I tried not to feel stung. My mother and aunt were family too. It made sense they would want to be involved. I was just being sensitive. 2 weeks later, I joined a family video call. My parents were there along with Megan, Derek, and Aunt Louise, my mother's younger sister, who had always been deeply involved in family affairs. They were gathered in my parents' living room, papers spread across the coffee table. What are you all working on? I asked cheerfully. The guest list, Megan said, trying to figure out seating arrangements for the reception. I leaned forward, interested. That sounds complicated with 200 people. Have you figured out the wedding party yet? Who is going to be in it? An uncomfortable silence fell over the call. I watched my mother glance at Megan, who suddenly found something fascinating on the floor. We are still working through all of that, Megan said vaguely. I will let you know once we decide. Anyway, I have to run. Derek and I have dinner reservations. Talk soon. The call ended abruptly. I sat staring at my blank laptop screen, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach. 2 weeks after that, I flew home to Ohio. Megan had mentioned that the bridesmaids were doing a dress fitting, and I assumed I would be part of it. She had not formally asked me to be a bridesmaid yet, but I was her sister. Her only sister. It seemed obvious that I would be standing beside her on her wedding day. When I arrived at my parents' house, nobody was there. I called Megan. Where is everyone? I thought the fitting was today. A pause. Oh, she said. That was actually yesterday. I thought I told you. I am so sorry, Sabrina. It totally slipped my mind. I stood alone in my parents' empty kitchen, the silence pressing against me. That is okay, I said, forcing lightness into my voice. These things happen. There is a lot going on. But after I hung up, I could not shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. I was paying for every aspect of this wedding, yet I seemed to be systematically excluded from every part of the planning process. I told myself I was imagining things. Megan was stressed. Wedding planning was chaotic. There was no conspiracy. My family would never treat me like an outsider. I had no idea how wrong I was. It was a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks before the wedding. I was at my desk on the 42nd floor, buried in spreadsheets and quarterly projections. Most of my colleagues had already left for the day. The cleaning crew would arrive soon. I had stayed late to finish a report that was due the following morning. My phone buzzed. Megan's name appeared on the screen. I picked up immediately. Hey Megan, what is going on? Silence. I frowned. Megan, can you hear me? Nothing, or at least nothing directed at me. But I could hear something. Muffled voices. Laughter. The clink of glasses. She had called me by accident. Her phone must have dialed me from her pocket or her purse. I was about to hang up when I heard my name. I froze. Sabrina always thinks she is so much better than us, my mother was saying, just because she has that fancy job and makes all that money. She looks down on us like we are beneath her. She always has. My hand tightened around the phone. The blood drained from my face. I could not move. She has never really been part of this family, my mother continued. Always too busy with work. Too important to come visit more than a couple times a year, but she is happy to throw money at us like that makes up for actually being present. My father's voice came next, gruff and dismissive. She thinks sending checks is the same as love. Like money can buy her way into our hearts. It cannot. Each word hit me like a physical blow. I sat there paralyzed, listening to my parents tear me apart. Then Megan spoke, and somehow that was the worst of all. Honestly, I do not want her at the wedding, Derek. She will find some way to make it all about herself. She always has to be the center of attention. And what will your family think when they see my 34-year-old single sister who has nothing in her life except her job and her money? It is embarrassing. Derek laughed. My family does not need to know you even have a sister. Less complicated that way. Exactly. Megan agreed. We will just take her money and keep her out of it. It is not like she will even notice. She barely comes home anyway. Then Aunt Louise chimed in, her voice dripping with casual cruelty. Just get what you can and then cut her loose. Simple. She has always been the odd one out in this family. Nobody will miss her at the wedding. My mother laughed at that, a genuine amused laugh. That is true. Sometimes I forget she is even my daughter. Everyone laughed together. My mother, my father, my sister, my aunt, my future brother-in-law, all of them laughing at the idea of forgetting I exist. I sat at my desk in complete stillness, tears streaming down my face. I did not even realize I was crying until I felt the moisture dripping onto my blouse. 12 years. 12 years of sacrifice. 12 years of putting their needs above my own, of sending money I could barely spare, of working myself to exhaustion so they could be comfortable. And this was what they thought of me. This was who they really were. I listened for another several minutes, unable to hang up, unable to look away from the destruction unfolding in my ear. They talked about the wedding, about how beautiful it would be, about how Megan was going to be the most stunning bride anyone had ever seen. They talked about impressing Derek's wealthy family, about climbing the social ladder, about all the doors this marriage would open. Not once did anyone defend me. Not once did anyone say, wait, that is not fair. Not a single person in that room spoke up for the woman who had bankrolled their entire lives. Then I heard Megan gasp. Oh no, she said. I think I accidentally called Sabrina. Dead silence. Do you think she heard? My mother asked, her voice suddenly tight. I do not know. Let me check. The line went dead. I sat in my office chair for a long time after that. Minutes. Maybe hours. I did not move. I did not think. I just existed in a state of complete numbness, like my mind had shut down to protect itself from the enormity of what I had just experienced. 12 years of devotion. Close to $500,000. Countless missed opportunities and sacrificed dreams, and to them I was nothing. Less than nothing. I was a wallet with legs. An ATM they occasionally had to tolerate. The cleaning crew arrived at some point. I heard them vacuuming in the hallway, emptying trash cans in nearby offices. The lights in my section dimmed automatically on their timer. I sat in the darkness, phone still clutched in my hand, staring at nothing. I thought about every sacrifice I had made, every vacation I had skipped because I needed to save money for them, every relationship that had withered because I was too focused on work to nurture it. Every birthday I had spent alone in my apartment because flights home were expensive and they never offered to visit me. I thought about the apartment I lived in, small and sparse, while my parents lived mortgage-free in a comfortable house I had paid for. I thought about the car I drove, a sensible sedan I had bought used, while my father tooled around in a brand new truck I had gifted him. I thought about all the times I had told myself they loved me. All the times I had made excuses for their indifference. All the times I had convinced myself that being needed was the same as being valued. Something broke inside me that night, something fundamental, but something else took its place. Something harder, something that had been sleeping for 34 years and was finally waking up. I was done. 3 days passed in a fog. I went through the motions of my life, showed up at the office, attended meetings, answered emails, but inside I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere cold and quiet, processing the magnitude of what I had learned. Megan texted me once during those 3 days. A casual message asking about the final payment for the catering company. No greeting, no small talk. Just a reminder that money was expected. I did not respond. My mother called on the second day. I watched her name flash on my screen until it went to voicemail. She left a message asking me to wire the deposit for the rehearsal dinner venue. Her voice was normal, cheerful even, as if nothing had happened, as if I had not heard every poisonous word. I deleted the message without responding. On the fourth day, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The area code was from Ohio. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello, hi, is this Sabrina? The voice was female professional, slightly hesitant. Yes, this is she. This is Harper. I am the wedding planner for your sister Megan's wedding. I sat up straighter. Harper, the wedding planner I had paid $8,000 for. Yes, I said carefully. What can I do for you? There was a pause. I could tell she was choosing her words with care. I am calling because there is a situation I felt you should be aware of. It is a bit unusual, but my professional ethics compelled me to reach out. What kind of situation? Harper took a breath. This morning, I received a call from your mother and your sister. They instructed me to make changes to the guest list for the wedding, and another pause longer this time. Your name has been removed from the list. You have been uninvited from the wedding. I closed my eyes. I had known this was coming. I had heard them discuss it, but hearing it confirmed so matter-of-factly still felt like being punched in the stomach. I see, I said quietly, but Harper was not finished. Here is the thing, Sabrina, and this is why I am calling. I have been planning weddings for 15 years. I have seen family drama, bridezilla behavior, all sorts of chaos, but I have never encountered a situation quite like this. She paused for emphasis. You are the one paying for this entire wedding. Every single vendor contract has your name on it. Every payment has come from your account. You have personally invested $60,000 into this event, and now the bride's family has removed you from the guest list while keeping every penny you paid. There was genuine outrage in her voice, not professional concern. Real anger on my behalf. I felt it was my duty to inform you, Harper continued, because what they are doing is wrong. Ethically, morally, legally. It is wrong. I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words sink in. Then I asked the question that had been forming in my mind since she first said my name. Harper, let me ask you something. All of these vendor contracts, the venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, whose name are they under? Yours, she said without hesitation. You signed all of them. You made all the payments. You are the primary client as far as every vendor is concerned. So I have the legal authority to make changes to those contracts, to cancel them if I choose. A brief pause. Technically, yes, you have full authority over everything because you are the paying party. I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of decision. Then I want you to cancel everything. Silence on the other end. I am sorry, Harper asked. I want you to pull every single vendor, cancel the venue reservation. Cancel the catering contract, cancel the flowers, the photography, the videography, the music, everything. I want it all cancelled. Harper's voice was cautious now. Sabrina, I understand you are upset, and frankly you have every right to be, but the wedding is in 3 weeks. If we cancel now, there is no way they will find replacement vendors in time. The wedding will essentially be destroyed, I said calmly. Yes, I understand. Are you certain about this? Harper asked. I mean, this is your sister's wedding. This is a significant decision. My sister, I repeated. The same sister who called me embarrassing. Who does not want me to exist at her wedding, who planned to take my $60,000 and pretend I do not have a sister. I paused. I have never been more certain of anything in my entire life. Cancel everything. Today. There was a long moment of silence. Then Harper spoke and I could hear something like respect in her voice. Understood. I will begin making calls immediately. It will take a day or two to work through everything, but I will keep you updated on each cancellation. Thank you, Harper. I appreciate you calling me. Most people would not have bothered. Most people, she said, have not been in the business long enough to know that sometimes the person paying the bills is not the person getting married. And that does not mean they deserve to be treated like garbage. I will be in touch. I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment. My hands were trembling. My heart was racing, but beneath the anxiety there was something else, something I had not felt in a very long time. Power, agency, control over my own life. For 12 years I had given and given and given, expecting nothing in return except love, and I had received nothing in return except contempt. It was time for the giving to stop. It was time for the taking back to begin. Harper worked quickly and efficiently. Within 48 hours, she had contacted every vendor associated with the wedding and initiated cancellation procedures on my behalf. Lakewood Estate was the first domino to fall. Because we were canceling outside the optimal window, we forfeited a portion of the deposit. But $7,000 would be refunded to my account. More importantly, that gorgeous Victorian mansion with its rolling hills and pristine gardens was no longer reserved for Megan's special day. The catering company was next. We lost the initial deposit, but the remaining balance of $8,000 would not be charged. 200 guests would not be enjoying their 5-course meal after all. The florist agreed to cancel with only a modest penalty. Those thousands of roses and peonies would go to someone else's celebration. The band cancelled entirely, returning their deposit in full, since we were outside their 48-hour policy. The DJ followed suit. The photographer and videographer were the easiest. Since the service date had not arrived, the contract included a full refund clause. $7,000 returned to my account. I made some calls myself. The hotel where I had reserved a block of rooms for out-of-town guests. The limousine company I had hired for the bridal party. The bakery that was crafting a 5-tier wedding cake. One by one, I cancelled them all. The only thing that could not be undone was the wedding dress. It had already been made custom designed to Megan's exact specifications, hand-beaded and fitted just for her. $9,000 that would never be recovered. I decided not to care. Let her keep the dress. She could wear it while sitting in her apartment because there was no longer a wedding for her to wear it to. 2 days after I gave Harper the go-ahead, my phone began to explode. The first call came from Megan. I watched her name flash on my screen, let it ring through to voicemail. She called again immediately, and again, and again. I counted 23 missed calls before I finally blocked her number. Then came the texts, from my mother demanding to know what I had done, from my father calling me selfish and spiteful, from Aunt Louise accusing me of destroying the family. I blocked them all. Then strangers started calling. Numbers I did not recognize from area codes I did not know. Extended family members I had not spoken to in years. Friends of my parents. People I had never met, all of them reaching out to tell me what a terrible, vindictive, ungrateful person I was. Aunt Louise had apparently launched a full-scale information campaign. The narrative she spread was simple. Sabrina had lost her mind. Sabrina was jealous of her beautiful sister. Sabrina could not stand to see anyone else happy. I blocked every single number that contacted me with hostility. My block list grew to over 40 people in the span of 3 days. But on the 4th day, Megan found a way through. She called from Derek's phone, a number I had not thought to block. I answered without checking the caller ID. "Sabrina, please." Her voice was raw, desperate, choked with tears. "Please, you have to fix this. The wedding is destroyed. Everything is cancelled. The venue called and said you terminated the contract. The caterer said the same thing. Please, Sabrina, you have to undo this." I listened to her beg. Part of me felt something, a distant echo of the sisterly love I had once felt, but then I remembered her words from that phone call. Embarrassing. Nothing except money. We will just take her money and keep her out of it. The echo faded. "You want to know why I did this?" I asked calmly. "Because you are jealous," she spat, her tone shifting instantly from pleading to venomous. "Because you are a bitter, lonely woman who cannot stand to see me happy." "No," I said. "I did this because I heard everything, Megan. The accidental call. Your phone dialed me while you were all sitting around discussing how worthless I am." Silence on her end. "I heard Mom say she sometimes forgets I am her daughter. I heard Dad say my money is not the same as love. I heard you say I would embarrass you in front of Derek's family. I heard Aunt Louise suggest you take my cash and then cut me out. Still nothing. 12 years, Megan. 12 years I've supported this family. Paid off mortgages, covered medical bills, funded your education, bankrolled your business, paid $60,000 for this wedding. And in return, I get mocked behind my back and uninvited from the ceremony." "Sabrina, we did not mean," she started. "Save it." I cut her off. "I heard exactly what you meant. Every word. Every laugh, every cruel joke at my expense." There was a sound in the background. Other voices. The phone was on speaker. Of course it was. "So yes," I continued, "I cancelled the wedding. Because I am done being your personal ATM. I am done sacrificing everything for people who do not even want me around. You wanted my money without having to tolerate my presence. Congratulations. Now you have neither. My mother's voice came through the speaker, sharp and commanding. Sabrina, that is enough. You need to calm down and think about what you are doing. This is your sister's wedding. My sister, I repeated. The sister who called me embarrassing. The sister who wanted to hide my existence from her in-laws. The sister who was perfectly happy to take $60,000 from me and then pretend I do not exist. We are your family, my mother insisted. Family forgives. Family moves past disagreements. You are being incredibly selfish. I laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. Selfish. I've given this family close to $500,000 over the past 12 years. I have sacrificed vacations, relationships, my entire personal life to make sure you are all comfortable. And I am the selfish one. You should have been grateful we let you help, my father growled. Instead, you throw it back in our faces. Grateful, I repeated. Grateful that you allowed me the privilege of funding your entire lives while you mocked me behind my back. You are right, Dad. How ungrateful of me. This is ridiculous, Aunt Louise snapped. You are acting like a child. This conversation is over, I said calmly. The wedding is cancelled. My involvement with this family is cancelled. Do not contact me again. I hung up and immediately blocked Derek's number. Then I sat in the sudden silence of my apartment and waited for the guilt to come. The remorse. The second guessing. It never arrived. For the first time in 12 years, I had chosen myself, and it felt like freedom. The aftermath was brutal but clarifying. Aunt Louise weaponized social media with remarkable efficiency. Within days of the cancellation, my Facebook timeline was flooded with comments from people I barely knew, all of them condemning me for my cruelty. She had crafted a narrative in which I was the villain, a bitter spinster who had deliberately sabotaged her beautiful sister's wedding out of jealousy and spite. I did not respond to any of it. I simply adjusted my privacy settings, unfriended the attackers, and eventually deactivated my account entirely. Let them rage into the void. I was done performing for people who had never cared about me. Extended family members called to lecture me. A cousin I had not spoken to since high school left a voicemail calling me a disgrace. An uncle sent a handwritten letter expressing his profound disappointment. My grandmother, who I had always adored, left a trembling voice message begging me to reconsider. I listened to that one several times. It was the only one that gave me pause, but even my grandmother, I realized, was not calling to hear my side of the story. She was calling to convince me to fall back in line, to resume my role as the family benefactor, to sacrifice my dignity once again for the sake of peace. I did not call her back. At work, I went through the motions, meetings, reports, conference calls. My performance did not suffer. I had spent 12 years compartmentalizing my personal pain so I could focus on my job. This was no different, just another layer of hurt to bury beneath professionalism. But Natalie noticed something was wrong. Natalie had started at the firm around the same time I did. We had bonded over late nights and terrible cafeteria coffee, developing a friendship that existed mostly within the walls of the office. She was warm, perceptive, and fiercely loyal, the kind of friend I had never had time to make outside of work. One afternoon, she appeared at my desk with 2 cups of coffee and a knowing look. "You are not okay," she said simply. "Tell me what is happening." I hesitated. I had not talked to anyone about the situation, had not put the words together out loud, but something about Natalie's patient presence broke through my defenses. We went to a quiet cafe down the street from the office, and I told her everything: the 12 years of financial support, the accidental phone call, the cancellation, the fallout. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to disbelief to outrage as the story unfolded. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and shook her head slowly. "Sabrina," she said, "what they did to you is absolutely unforgivable. I mean that. Taking your money and then treating you like you are disposable, that is not family, that is exploitation, that is abuse." Hearing someone else say it made it feel real. I was not overreacting. I was not being dramatic. What had happened to me was wrong and I was right to be angry. "You did the right thing," Natalie continued. "Canceling that wedding was not petty revenge, it was self-defense. They were using you. They would have kept using you for the rest of your life if you had let them." "I know," I said quietly, "but it still hurts. They are still my family. Or they were." Natalie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Here is what I have learned," she said. "Family is not just about blood. Family is the people who show up for you, who support you, who love you without conditions or expectations. And those people, She shook her head. They were never your family. They were just people who shared your DNA and took advantage of your kindness. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain. I felt seen. I felt understood. I felt less alone. A few days later, Marcus called me into his office. Marcus was my boss, a veteran of the financial industry who had built the department from the ground up. He was demanding but fair, the kind of leader who noticed everything and said very little. When he spoke, people listened. I assumed he wanted to discuss a client account or review my quarterly numbers. Instead, he gestured for me to sit and studied me with an expression I could not read. "You have seemed distracted lately," he said. "Not performing poorly, just not fully present. Is there something going on that I should know about?" I considered deflecting, saying everything was fine. But Marcus had always been direct with me, and I owed him the same courtesy. "I have been dealing with some family issues," I admitted. "It has been a difficult few weeks." He nodded slowly. "Do you want to talk about it?" I gave him the abbreviated version: the financial support, the betrayal, the consequences. His expression grew more serious with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised me. "I do not usually share personal experiences with employees, but your situation reminds me of something I went through years ago when I was first starting to make real money." I looked at him curiously. "My family treated me like I had won the lottery," he continued. "Everyone had their hand out. Parents, siblings, cousins, even people I barely knew. I gave freely because I thought that was what you did for family. And then I realized they only contacted me when they needed something. The rest of the time I did not exist to them." "What did you do?" I asked. "I stopped giving. Completely. Cold turkey. Set boundaries for the first time in my life. It was the hardest thing I have ever done." He paused. "Some of them never spoke to me again. Blamed me for abandoning them. But the ones who stayed learned to respect me. And more importantly, I learned to respect myself." He leaned forward slightly. "The people closest to us are sometimes the ones who cannot see our value. That is their failure, not ours. You built your career. You earned everything you have. Do not let anyone make you feel guilty for finally protecting yourself." I left his office feeling something I had not felt in a long time. Hope. Like maybe this was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter. That night I made a decision. I needed to get away, to breathe, to figure out who I was without the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me. I called my travel agent and booked a trip to Monterey Bay in California, a place I had always wanted to visit but never had time for. A week of solitude by the ocean, a chance to heal. For the first time in 12 years, I was doing something purely for myself, and it felt revolutionary. Monterey Bay exceeded every expectation I had. I arrived on a Tuesday morning after a cross-country flight and a scenic drive down the Pacific Coast Highway. The cottage I had rented sat on a bluff overlooking the water, a small weathered structure with a wraparound porch and windows that framed the endless blue of the ocean. The first day I did nothing productive. I sat on that porch with a cup of coffee and watched the waves crash against the rocks below. I listened to the seagulls calling to each other. I breathed in the salt air and let it fill my lungs. I let myself be still. It was harder than I expected. My mind kept racing, cycling through memories and resentments and what-ifs. The silence felt uncomfortable, almost oppressive. I was so accustomed to constant motion, constant productivity, constant focus on everyone else's needs. Being alone with my own thoughts was terrifying. But I stayed with it. I did not run from the discomfort. I let it wash over me like the waves washing over the rocks below. The first few days were difficult. I cried more than I had cried in years. Deep racking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient inside me. I was mourning, I realized. Not just the loss of my family, but the loss of the family I thought I had. The loss of the story I had told myself for 34 years. I started writing in a journal, pouring out everything I had kept bottled up for so long. I wrote about my childhood, about the pressure to be perfect, about learning to equate love with sacrifice. I wrote about the phone call, every word seared into my memory. I wrote about the anger and the hurt and the profound sense of betrayal. I wrote until my hand cramped and my eyes burned and there was nothing left inside me but empty, echoing space. And then gradually something began to shift. I woke up one morning to find that the weight on my chest had lifted slightly. The sun was streaming through my window, casting golden patterns on the wooden floor. I walked down to the beach and stood at the edge of the water, letting the cold waves lap against my bare feet. A realization crystallized in that moment, clear and undeniable. I had been mourning a family that never really existed. The loving, supportive family I thought I had was a fantasy, a story I'd constructed to justify all the sacrifices I made. The truth was simpler and more painful. They had never valued me for who I was, only for what I could provide. But here was the other truth, the one that felt like sunrise after a long dark night. I could not control how they felt about me. I could only control how I responded. And I was done responding with endless giving and desperate hoping. I was done waiting for love that was never going to arrive. I decided to forgive them, not for their sake but for mine. Carrying all that anger was like drinking poison and waiting for them to get sick. It was destroying me, not them. And they did not deserve that kind of power over my life. Forgiveness did not mean reconciliation. It did not mean pretending nothing had happened or opening myself up to be hurt again. It simply meant letting go, releasing the grip their words had on my heart, choosing my own peace over their chaos. It was not a single moment of transformation. It was a gradual process, day by day, hour by hour. But slowly I felt myself returning to life. I started doing things I had never allowed myself to do. I bought a beautiful hand-carved wooden box from a local artisan. I treated myself to an absurdly expensive dinner at a restaurant overlooking the bay, savoring every bite without calculating the cost. I slept late. I read novels for pleasure instead of industry reports. I talked to strangers and laughed at their stories. I remembered what it felt like to be a person rather than a resource. On my last evening in Monterey, I sat on the beach and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The first stars began to emerge as darkness settled over the water. I made a promise to myself in that moment. From now on, I would put myself first, not in a selfish way but in a healthy way. I would nurture relationships with people who genuinely cared about me. I would invest in my own happiness and well-being. I would stop trying to earn love through sacrifice. I would simply be myself and trust that the right people would appreciate me for exactly who I was. I flew back to Chicago the next day feeling like a different person, not completely healed. Healing does not work that way, but on the path, moving forward. And that was enough. The first thing I did when I got home was start looking at apartments. My current place was small and sparse because I had always been saving money to send to Ohio. But that chapter was closed now. I deserved a home that felt like a home. Within a month, I closed on a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in a high-rise with views of the city skyline. It had hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a kitchen where I could actually cook real meals. The first night I slept there, I cried. But they were tears of joy this time, tears of arrival. I also started saying yes to invitations I would have declined before. Dinner parties with colleagues, weekend trips with Natalie, a hiking group that explored trails outside the city, a wine-tasting club that met once a month. I was building a community, one connection at a time. As for my biological family, I heard updates through the grapevine. The wedding had been postponed by 2 months while they scrambled to find alternative arrangements. Derek's parents had eventually stepped in to cover the costs of a much smaller ceremony at a local banquet hall. 50 guests instead of 200. No historic mansion, no designer flowers. No live orchestra. I did not attend. I was not invited, and even if I had been, I would not have gone. My mother sent me an email about 2 months after I returned from California. It was long and rambling, full of contradictions and self-justification. She said she was sorry for any misunderstanding. She also said I had overreacted dramatically. She said she missed me and wanted to repair our relationship. She also blamed me for humiliating the family in front of Derek's parents. I read the email 3 times, searching for anything that resembled genuine remorse or accountability. I found nothing but deflection and denial. I closed the email without responding. Maybe someday there would be a conversation. Maybe someday they would truly understand what they had done and take responsibility for it. But that day had not arrived, and I was done waiting around for people to treat me with basic human decency. I was finally living for myself, choosing myself, prioritizing myself. And you know what? It was not selfish at all. It was the most necessary thing I had ever done. The lesson that emerged from all of this was simple but profound. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness, it is self-destruction. I had given and given for 12 years because I thought that was what love required. But real love does not deplete you. Real love replenishes you. Real love does not make you feel invisible. It makes you feel seen. The people who truly care about you will never make you feel like you need to purchase their affection. They will never take everything you have and then discard you when you stop being useful. They will cherish you for who you are, not what you can provide. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is survival, and walking away from people who hurt you is not cruel. It is courageous. It is the bravest thing you will ever do. I used to believe that family was everything, that blood was thicker than water, that you had to sacrifice yourself for your relatives no matter how they treated you. Now I know better. Family is the people who choose to love you without conditions, the people who show up and lift you up rather than tear you down. Sometimes those people share your DNA, sometimes they do not, but the blood in your veins does not automatically entitle anyone to a place in your heart. If you find yourself in a situation like mine, feeling used and unappreciated and taken for granted, please hear me. You deserve better. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not exploited for what you can give. You deserve relationships that nourish your soul instead of draining it. And if the people in your life cannot offer you that basic dignity, it is okay to let them go. It is okay to choose yourself. It is okay to walk away and build a new life with people who actually deserve to be in it. These days, I sit on the balcony of my beautiful new home and watch the city lights sparkle below. I have dinner with friends who make me laugh until my face hurts. I have colleagues who respect my work and value my contributions. I have a life that is finally, truly, completely mine. Do I still think about my biological family sometimes? Yes, I am human, but the ache has faded. I have stopped mourning the family I thought I had and started celebrating the life I have built. And that life, it is pretty wonderful. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself giving everything to people who gave nothing back? Have you had to draw a line with family members who treated you like an ATM instead of a human being? How did you find the courage to finally put yourself first? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know that hearing from others who have walked this path can be incredibly healing. You are not alone. If this story touched something in you, please give it a like. It helps more than you know and lets me know that these stories matter. And if you have not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next story. I share new stories every week about resilience, about boundaries, about finding your way back to yourself after being broken. Please share this video with anyone who might need to hear it. You never know who in your life is silently struggling with a similar situation. Your share could be the thing that helps them realize they deserve better. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening, for being here, for being part of this community. It means the world to me. And remember this, you are worthy of love and respect exactly as you are, not because of what you can give or what you can do for others, simply because you exist. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Take care of yourself, be gentle with yourself, and I will see you in the next one.